Welcome to episode number 8 of The Corner Booth. We are here at Green Spot Restaurant. Aaron Rand along with Leslie Chesterman and Bill Brownstein, and our special guest today, mayoral candidate Balarama Holness. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the warm welcome and the great people.
You have to get off your phone for the entire time. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay, to stay off the phone.
No phones, eyes on eyes.
Eyes on eyes.
Let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank you, as I said, for being here. It's been a pretty hectic week. Only a couple of weeks left to go. How do you feel overall?
I feel great. Just as you know, coming to this restaurant, someone saying, hey, I'm voting for you. We get that all the time. There are a lot of headwinds, a lot of critics, but we have a tremendous amount of love and support of people saying, you know what? All the critics out there, they're just afraid of change. And we do have bold, innovative policies. We are shaking the cage, but the support outweighs the critics, so we feel great.
By the way, just before you go on, I did want to mention, you just said someone came up to you. We were all here watching. Guys sitting at the other booth saying, I'm voting for you, completely unprompted. You didn't plant this guy.
Yes, he is
Okay.
planted.
And his name is
We do
Caesar.
have
And his name is
Name is
Caesar.
Caesar, yeah.
double A agents,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, all right. Bill, I know you want to start.
I'm thrilled to see you. You're smiling, and people would say you've gone through a week from hell, and you're still smiling. I mean, you had an issue with your the man who joined you, Mr. Desjardins.
Yeah.
He's left. Two candidates have withdrawn.
Yeah.
You're getting flack. You're getting hate mail, which I think is absolutely disgusting. And yet you're still here smiling and happy. If people could see you now, what are you on that makes you so happy?
We want some.
Yeah, we want some.
Listen, when I joined, when Desjardins and I created this bond, if you will, this was a political move. Denis Coderre had first approached him and asked for him to join, and the calculation was, well, if I say no to him, he goes to Coderre, and that's official loss for me. So this is also a political move. And maybe that doesn't explain why I'm smiling, but all I have to say is that this is politics, and it's a contact sport, kind of like football. And you are going to lose soldiers, you're going to lose men and women, but the ship has to keep on going. And as leader of this ship, I have to make sure that we remain focused. And I would say the epitome of that was the French debate. At the French debate, many people are thinking, is he going to crumble? Is he going to shake? Is he going to be nervous? Not at all, not one bit. When I found out that Desjardins left, I was picking up my baby from daycare. I did not bat an eye. Inconsequential, because this is a movement. It's not about an individual person or a few candidates that want to quit a week before the election. Doesn't matter.
That's great to have reacted that way, but let's go back a little. Why did you get involved with him at all? What was the positive for you?
So he approached us and said Denis Coderre had approached him to join his party. And he said, let's make history. Let's join forces. And I said, you know what? From my background, my mother is French-Canadian. My father is Jamaican. My mother is from the city. My father is from the country. And they fall in love at this Bob Marley concert. They get married, and I'm born. So these two dualities, these two solitudes, this is my identity. So when I see really what's supposed to be my direct opposite coming to join me, I'm saying maybe there's hope that we could bridge these two solitudes.
Without realizing that the bilingual issue, the French-English, was going to be a deal breaker? Did that not even come up for discussion?
No, what is it? These two solitudes. These. My mother is French.
No, I get it. But
my father is English.
You knew how he felt. I'm guessing he must have told you how he felt about the idea of a bilingual referendum for the city of Montreal. Did he not, or did he keep that to himself?
No. So that's step two. Step two is when we went to introduce to the public how we were going to solve the issue. What we said is people jumped to the referendum too quickly. We said we would send it to the public consultation office, and then people would decide. People might decide, you know what, we don't want to do the referendum.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you. You pitched the referendum idea first, then you pitched the public consultation idea, or do I have that wrong?
You have that wrong. The sentence is very clear. We hold a public consultation on language via the OCPM, the Office of Public Consultation of Montreal, and the people decide if they want to hold a referendum. But more importantly, we look at Bill 96 and other issues, whether it was businesses, colleges. We wanted Montrealers to be consulted. point final. And that's really clearly articulated when we introduced this potential eventuality of the referendum, to say it's the Public Consultation Office that would have Montrealers decide if we go in that direction. That was the concession that we were making. It's not for me to trigger it. It's for the people to trigger it.
And Mr. Desjardins was on board with that idea and then suddenly changed his mind and said, I'm not?
Be honest, it was his initial idea. It was his idea.
The consultation.
Yes, the consultation and the referendum. And then the day before we announced, he kind of backtracked on it. He was like, oh, wait, maybe it's not a good idea. And at that point, we had already been planning it. As you probably know, it had been a week time that we took to say, hey, we're going to announce our commonality. And the night before, he was backtracking and got cold feet, and we still went forward with it.
So you don't feel like you got backstabbed by him?
No, inconsequential. And that's the whole thing about, this is the whole thing about movements and why I'm smiling. It's not about me. It's not about Desjardins. It's the issue is, are Anglophone Montrealers going to have their rights preserved? That's the fundamental issue. So if I'm attacked, defamed, CBC saying a volunteer said I'm a bad leader, I have Mathieu Bocoté saying I'm anti-Quebec, this is inconsequential. It has no impact. And that's why when I went on the debate stage, I did not flinch. Not a single flinch, because it's bigger than us. It's bigger than an individual person. And I'll end this little rant on this. I think it's the last shot that Anglophones and minorities have in Quebec. This is our last shot. When you have Bill 96 that's coming into play, there's going to be others. We have Bill 2 now talking about gender issues and the LGBTQ community. The cleansing of Quebec, generally speaking, if you're outside of being white, French, heterosexual, you're going to be impeded upon. And for me, I think that we're on our last breath. So if Desjardins quits, this is inconsequential to a larger, more important issue.
So I want to go back. You have a guy here, as soon as you walked in, like you said, oh, I'm voting for you, which is obviously nice to hear. You say you've had other people do the same. You seem to deflect pretty much any bad stuff. As Bill said, you're smiling, you're happy, or whatever. But don't tell me it didn't bother you to read about a couple of people at Montreal in Action all coming out together and saying, hey, you know what? Not only was he a tough guy to work for or work with, we don't think he's fit to be mayor. That didn't hurt?
Inconsequential. And I'll tell you why. This is what CBC didn't say, is that those people never met me, never worked with me. After George Floyd passed away, we went from 5 volunteers to 250 volunteers, all on Slack and on Zoom. If you ask them, how many brothers or sisters does Balarama have? They couldn't even tell you. So what occurred is that people got on Zoom, got on Slack, and volunteers started dropping out. And if one volunteer comes and says Balarama's a bad person, we have 22,000 signatures that we had. We have 98% of the time that these people weren't there, we were extremely successful. I take that as defamation and misrepresentation. But once again, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for a larger cause. And if someone wants to defame me, it makes no difference.
But to be fair, they, from what I understand, they weren't saying you were a bad person. They said you didn't have much in the way of management skills. You couldn't, work with other people necessarily. That's something a mayor would have to do. Did you not take that from it?
There's 22,000 people that disagree with them. They weren't part of the signature collection, weren't part of the public consultation, weren't part of Black History Month, were not part of the action plan that was submitted. They were there for a cup of tea after George Floyd. So if you're there for a cup of tea after George Floyd on a Zoom meeting and you've never had an in-person work meeting with me, come out and attack me. And CBC was so happy. The journalists were like, we got him. Look, he's not perfect. He had a volunteer that said he's a bad person and a bad leader. Look, we got him. They were so happy. And I said, listen, I was like, we made mistakes post George Floyd. Our organization got way too big. But if you come for an organization for a cup of tea for 3 months and you want to backstab us 10 days before the vote par anticipation, go right ahead. Wouldn't bat an eye, and I showed it during the debate.
You just said this idea of you're not perfect. Are you perfect? Are you the perfect person to run this city? And
absolutely
why?
not. No one can say that they're the perfect person to run the city. We all have flaws. What I can tell you is that we've experienced Denis Coderre. We've experienced Valérie Plante. And what I'm saying is that I am a far better leader and would have significant changes in Montreal vis-a-vis those two.
What about the polls? I don't understand why. I mean, neither of them are running away with any of this. They're 26, 25%.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing better in the polls? People like you.
Well, and to be fair, you went from 10% the poll before that down to 5% in
Right.
the last poll.
Yeah, and that was interesting because Denis Coderre went from 35% to 25%. So it was the ratio of
But
the
he
poll.
stayed roughly in that area
Right.
the first time he fell.
What
Right?
do you mean?
He went from 37 to 26 or 25, but he's still around 25, 26. You went from 10, now you're down to 5. And you'd think that after the debate, and maybe we'll have a poll out this week,
Yeah.
I would think that, your poll ranking might even be a little higher. But do you think about what happened to that 5% that disappeared?
No, what I looked at as 27%, the winner of that.
27% undecided,
Thank
by the
you.
way.
That was the winner of that poll. Listen, democracies are beautiful, but this democracy is not even. It wasn't at the Chamber of Commerce debate. Like tonight, there's a debate. I'm not there. Anyone thinking that I had a great performance at the TVA debate that doesn't see me tonight, like, well, he must not be that credible. He didn't make the debate tonight. So if you are not at the tourism debate, you're not at the Radio-Canada debate, you're not at the Corum debate, you're not at the Chamber of Commerce debate, if you're just excluded through and through, well, yeah, you lose credibility in the eyes of someone that says, you know what, I'm undecided. I can guarantee you if I have equal opportunity to articulate our policy, at TVA was not the best format. It was like just bickering. But if we have equal opportunity, I think that it would be a little bit more even. And on the 28th, this is the big thing. The big thing. People make the decision to vote 40 hours before election time. The 28th is 40 hours before the first polls open.
So you're confident.
It's not about confidence. I have a squad. I have 70 candidates. I have a movement going. It's not about confidence. It's who we are.
Could you you told us when you came in
I'm
that
excited here.
that you're 38 years old, which is extremely young, because I'm 54 and I feel that's young, and you're extremely young.
Yeah.
But young in the sense of, do you ever feel now that you're positioning yourself for the next time around? Is it this time around? Are you here to stay till the next election as well? I mean, it's everybody in politics wants to say, I'm here for this election, but is this also maybe a positioning? Because sometimes people who are older think that way too. They think, oh, he's around for the next election. How do you see it?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. I'm really living in the moment, and that's why you see me like energetic and smiling, because like it's a beautiful day out right now, and I have I'm gonna see my baby daughter later. I'm prepping for the debate on the 28th, and that's how I've been pretty successful in my life, is that I've been able to put my mind to things pretty well. So I want to go to McGill Law, and I could sit in a room and for like 4 months and write my personal statement and guarantee that I get in. Same thing for the CFL. When I was 18 years old, I was convinced that I could make the CFL. 7 years later, I was in the league, because I have an ability to focus despite the fact that there's headwinds. So it's like, the horse with the
Blinders.
Yeah. I'm able to focus. So I don't know what's going to happen after, but right now my focus is on the 28th, and that big game day.
To Leslie's question, though, there are people, and we've seen this, who are looking at you and saying, you know what, you're just basically positioning yourself now for a run down the road for either federal or provincial politics. And you look at Melanie Jolie as a case in point.
Are you the Melanie Jolie
Right.
of this election?
To be honest, does anyone in the Liberal Party right now say, this is a guy I really want on my team? I am probably the most controversial mayoral candidate in the history of Montreal. No? I don't know.
We'd have to look back.
I don't know.
Well, controversial in the sense that, your ideas are about 180 degrees apart, the main ideas anyway, from the candidates that are running now. I mean, historically, I guess we could go back 50 years and say maybe not. Jean Drapeau, after losing $1 gazillion in the Olympics, I mean, that was a big deal too. But is this, back of your mind, provincial politics, federal politics, regardless of whether you're controversial or not?
True.
You're saying they don't want to go near you because you are. Don't necessarily think that's the truth. You're young. You're a person who's in a cultural community. Imagine you'd be a pretty good get for a party, don't you?
So, and I think that people that think like that would crack and fail on stage when the pressure is on. Say I had any element of inauthenticity about me, and I was doing something to try to get to another level, I would go on debate stage, and because I'm inauthentic in my thought and positioning, you would see the fractures, and when the pressure would be on, you would crack. But when all the pressure is on, it's in French, it's against two people who are trying to attack me. Why do I look solid? Is because I'm authentically there for real. If I had ulterior motives, you would fail a long time ago.
Okay. So you brought up issues. We might as well get to issues because there are a couple that are top of mind for voters. Number one, public security. We know the crime issue. We know the gun issue. I think, and I want to make sure I'm right here, are you in favor of cutting the size of the police force, or do you just want to redistribute the police force? What's your solution?
So right now, there's an $800 million budget for the police. And what we're saying is that 40% of all tickets go to homeless people, which means that all these resources are policing poverty. And I compare it to a famine. If you had a famine, do you put an army around the bakeries and spend $10 million on army, or do you spend $10 million on bread and you feed people? Spend $10 million on bread and you feed people. So right now, 24,000 people waiting for social housing. Those that don't have social housing are in the streets being policed. So what do? We call it a reallocation. You take from the management positions at the city police right now, making upwards of $300,000 a year, $200,000, exorbitant salaries, and you reduce the management. You keep your 4,000 workforce for now on the ground, and you end up hitting the root cause of the problem, which is poverty. That's the 40%. Also, those 4,000 police officers right now, that will eventually, over time, be reduced. Why? We cannot value our police force if you're being paid $120,000 a year to change lights. There's, so many police officers that are not tackling violent crime, that are not tackling the proliferation of firearms, and we could use a more flexible, dynamic police force to tackle violent crime. And from that 4,000, we can replace some of them with intervention workers, mental health assistants, interveners. You're going through a psychosis on the streets and you're vulnerable. You have schizophrenia. You are on some serious drugs. We do not need someone with a gun there. We need someone with a first aid kit and access to health and social services and possibly an ambulance. So it's not about, people get afraid of saying, oh, reducing the police force and reducing the budget. It's that you don't need a police officer to intervene in mental health crises. They have to intervene in violent gangs are shooting people.
Yeah, so you're not saying, you're not for defunding, you're for realigning is the message.
Realigning and reallocating. And last point on that is, there was a 16-year-old boy who joined a gang and he was stabbed to death a few days ago. Okay? Why is he in a gang at 16 years old? Well, no sports, leisure, recreation infrastructure, probably in school or on the verge of dropping out of school. We call these young people at-risk youth. You have to solve it through love, support, leisure, recreation, sports infrastructure, helping them stay in school, better job training, science, tech, engineering, math, maybe a diverse curriculum for 21st century economy. That's how you get people back into the workforce and aligned. And last but not least, my story is that I drop out of school, I find football, and next thing you know, I'm a Grey Cup champion running for mayor and a McGill Law graduate with a Master's of Education. So I think it's a more intelligent, innovative, and socially conscious way of dealing with public security, and that's very different from what Coderre and Plante are doing.
The city's a mess. You can't move. I mean, I've been driving around in the city this weekend. Obstruction everywhere. People aren't coming downtown. People aren't going to the city. Do you have ideas about this? People are living out in the West Island, the South Shore, Laval. They're not coming in here. Yeah. How do you bring people back to Montreal? It's a mess right now. You'd have to agree.
It is a mess from the garbage to the cones. What's perplexing to me was that the mayor in 2017 said she was going to remove the cones, and the cones increased. And it's perplexing. It's saying, why is it that we can't change, we can't innovate, we can't reform? And that's the challenge. And that's what we're saying, is that we're going to come in and we're going to fix it. We're going to end and stop the contract for renting these silly cones, right? Also,
bought the bloody cones by now. We would have saved millions of
exactly.
dollars.
Yeah,
No, we rent these cones.
We rent these cones, and what we're simply saying is that we are not going to renew that contract. As simple as that. In regards to mess, and I mean literally mess. The concerning thing is that there are 28,000 municipal employees, represents 40% of our budget, and we're not seeing services rendered, which means that garbage pickup needs to be way better, snow removal needs to be better. There's all these things in which people and businesses are saying, I am okay and cool to pay taxes, but I need to see services rendered. And what we're saying is we're going to be more efficient and hold people to account, and that they have to have results based on the positions that they have. Right now, there are too many people working for the city of Montreal that are not, in français on dit atablatés. They're tabled. They're not doing the work they should be doing, and there will be significant cleanups, and I'll end this on that. The Controller General and the Director General will be changed under my administration. Serge Lamontagne and Alain Bond will be shifted out. These are equivalent of the CEO and CFO of a company. They will be X'd. Right now, they make $300,000 each around per person. So there are permanent positions at the city that need to be changed in order for the city to advance forward.
So one of the questions would be, you have a lot of ideas. Where are you going to get all this money from? It's not simply by cutting salaries.
And where does fluidity come from? I mean, we're talking about people honoring contracts, doing the work they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But there's still this issue of fluidity in the city and moving around. And there's the issue of businesses dying, and they don't get to vote, and yet they're the ones assuming the big tax burden.
Yeah, well,
we have to come to terms with that.
So the fluidity issue is also one whereby there needs to be, right now, 75% of all construction in the city is not done by the city. It's private or other levels of government. There needs to be bylaws that say that if you extend beyond a certain period of time, that you're fined. So what we have to establish is that there needs to be time limits that people would have to finish the job. There are too many construction sites that are there idling and things never get moved forward. So that could increase fluidity if we actually, solve the issue. Peel Street has been under construction for 10 years, right? So you have to be able to say, okay, we're going to cap it. If not, fine, and hopefully that could serve as a deterrent. But to your question,
money.
Yeah,
where are you getting it?
And this is the big point, is that both parties are talking about getting a percentage of TPS TVQ. No government, provincial or otherwise, is going to gratuitously say, here's a percentage. That's why what we're saying, and we're very clear about this, is that we do want city-state status. In other words, we want more power to be able to control our destiny, whether it's culturally, linguistically, as well as economically. Right now, and we mentioned it, we have a third of the GDP of all of Quebec, 200 billion. Our budget is 6 billion. How is that possible? That Montreal is the economic epicenter of Quebec, and politically and economically, we are ultimately at the basement of Quebec, right? We are subject to the legislation that comes from the National Assembly, and we have to give all of our economic benefit back to Quebec, back to Ottawa. So that's how we're going to pay for it, is by getting more autonomy, more power from Montreal. And why is that legitimate? In the 19th century, we basically created what a municipality is, which is basically an incorporation, nothing more than that. It's the 21st century now. Cities need more power. Cities need more autonomy. And I'm not here saying that I'm going to be like a founding father of Montreal, but what we're saying is that we want to be the first party that gets state-like status for the city of Montreal.
But you also have an issue, with developers and whatever, in building these units going forward. You're saying that the administration now, if you say you're going to provide, say, 20% affordable housing and you change your mind as a developer, all you do is pay a fine, you go on, you build what you want to build. How would you change that?
Yeah, so right now first of all, it took the city administration 3.5 years to put in this bylaw. They sent it to the public consultation office. During the debate, the mayor said she had the obligation to send it for consultation, which is completely false. She has no clue what she's doing. Completely false. The executive committee and city council can enact bylaws. They do not need to send it to the OCPM. So step one, it took her 3.5 years. That was the big mistake. Step two, there's a huge gaping loophole that allows, as you mentioned, a buyer to say, I'm going to pay myself out of it. That money represents 1% of the social the social housing unit demand, which is 24,000 on the waiting list. So what they're paying out, which is supposed to be used for social housing, represents 1% of that waiting list. So what we're saying is very clear. You have to close that loophole, oblige 20% social, affordable, and family housing, and get other municipalities and cities, demerged or otherwise, like Westmount, Point Claire, etc., to also adopt the bylaw in order for us to protect this affordability crisis. Because what will happen if only the 19 boroughs adopt it? They're going to go to Westmount, Point Claire, etc. So close the loophole and get other municipalities to collaborate and adopt that bylaw. That's how you solve the housing crisis.
I want to ask you about really the issue that has kind of become an asset for you and a liability, which is the bilingual status in Montreal.
Yeah.
So last week in the Journal de Montréal, there are many columnists who kind of took you on.
Yeah.
José Legault, I was reading the article this morning, who made a lot of interesting points about Montreal being so English, now getting back to being more French. This would be a huge step back. As an Anglophone in the city, we talked about this before just last week on the podcast, that to us it's a very bilingual city already, and there's a little bit of an idea here to, let's not forget all the Anglos, which has been really appealing to a lot of people in the Anglophone community to vote for you. You have received a lot of hate mail from French Canadians, I believe, from what I saw that you post on Twitter. So this has kind of divided you. It's kind of an asset for you and also a liability. How is your vision of Montreal really bilingual? You're going to have to really entice more francophones to get your numbers up as well. So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here.
No, because I'm not a politician. That's the difference.
Well,
You're not a politician.
The first time when I announced I ran for Montreal, I said, the first thing you need to know is that I'm not a politician. That's the first thing I said. And that's why our slogan is people before politics. If Montreal is a bilingual, multicultural city, we're going to say that unapologetically. And if there are certain people that are going to send us hate mail or not vote for us, so be it. Right? I think that's what people are missing in politics, is that you have to be honest and authentic, and even when it's not popular, you have to stick to what you believe in. And we're talking about Desjardins. When he came on, we said, we're not shifting stances on this, because that's just the nature of Montreal. It's the nature of who I am. My father, as mentioned, is an Anglophone from Jamaica. My mother's Francophone from Montreal. And that's the nature of Montreal. That's the nature of who I am. That's the nature of many of us. But what I will say is that we still value and uphold and protect the French language, and we can do that without excluding English. No one, not a single Anglophone in Montreal wants French to erode. We love the fact that French language...
I think you could find a few, but yes.
There's extremists on both ends. I don't mean extremists in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
I mean extremists on both ends, but the majority, let's say the majority, of people value the fact that we have a French swagger, that we can go to the old port, and that you can sit on a terrace, not on a patio, rather there's a certain element of romance when it comes to this Molière and Shakespeare and the charm of Montreal that we all love. And we want to uphold and protect the French language. And I'm very proud to speak French. I even did theater, Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme de Molière in French. We love French language, and we want to protect it. But we're also going to articulate the reality of Montreal. Real quick, a very good stat here. 11 million tourists a year come to Montreal. 11 million. What languages do you think they speak when they come here to communicate? English. Whether you come from China, from India, from Dubai, from Pakistan, if you New York, and obviously our neighbors to the south, you are going to operate, if you're operating in a language in Montreal, if you're a tourist, your majority of you are operating in English. So there's a reality, there's an economic and international reality to the language of business, which is English. And the head of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Leblanc, he had serious concerns about Bill 96, and he said that it's going to impact businesses that will be reticent to establish themselves here. So I think from a social, cultural, economic perspective, I think it's a legitimate point to say that Montreal is a bilingual city, and we shouldn't be shy. We shouldn't be shy about saying that.
So you just brought up Bill 96.
Yeah.
Both Valérie Plante and Denis Coderre, when asked, and we asked them both, are in favor of Bill 96, and then with the condition that if it passes or when it passes, services provided by the city would still be provided in English. Where are you on Bill 96? My understanding is you're not for Bill 96.
Yeah, but they have no power over that.
Right.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's what they say they will seek to get,
Yeah.
even if it passes.
To be honest, that's like having your cake and wanting it too, or sitting on two chairs in the sense of, I'm not for Bill 96, but I'm going to provide services in both languages. No, it's like saying I'm against Bill 21, but you can't wear religious symbols. Like, so
Okay.
I believe that we have to unequivocally establish that Bill 96 through and through is going way too far. We're obviously against Bill 96, but it also impacts, we mentioned businesses, but also young people who are French, who want to go to a English cégep, who now will be limited. And beyond that, why did I say at the beginning of the show is that why we're on our last breath is because this is step one. They're going to take, when I say they, the National Assembly, this step, but then what's next? What happens if in 3 or 4 years, because the CAC is not going anywhere, that they still see the Anglophone community thriving and businesses, they might come with another one and another one and another one until eventually they attempt to completely erode and erase,
You believe that the CAC wants no more English in the province of Quebec? It's certainly not in the city of Montreal. That's their plan?
No, I think it's a slippery slope. I don't think that they want to completely eliminate, I think that would go too far. What I'm establishing is that it's a very slippery slope because right now they're using the notwithstanding clause, which allows them to circumvent the courts. And I think that they're opening what we call in law the floodgates to limit rights. Right now, Pierrefonds is the only bilingual borough from the 19, and I don't know if they're gonna try to abolish that in the future. We saw what they did to English school boards. They tried to abolish the school boards. So at what point are they going to stop? And I think they're not going to stop until they guarantee homogenous French across Quebec, including here in Montreal. And what we're saying is that Montreal is not Rwanda. Montreal is Montreal, and that I, as a mayoral candidate, have to uphold and protect the uniqueness of Montreal and that cultural or multicultural identity that is Montreal.
Okay, I posted this on Facebook and took a couple of questions from people who logged
Cool.
in saying they know you're going to be here today. So one of them is this question. It seems your party is about you and mainly about you,
Yeah.
especially since Marc-Antoine Desjardins left. Who are the other candidates in your party? And first of all, what sort of experience do they have, if any, in political life?
Well, first of all, any head of a party, Denis Coderre, myself, or Valérie Plante, you're going to be the face of the party by its very nature. I'll just give you a few people. Nadine Shalati is a lawyer with her own firm running in Lachine. Her running mate sells and is in the business of data and technology. We could just go through the list. Stephanie Henry King is in the business of sustainable development. Matthew Kerr, running for head of NDG Côte des Neiges, he helps people who are homeless get back into the workforce. Adil Issa, my co-lister, is right now at McGill Law. Sam Morello is an LGBTQ advocate who's also in the creative production video industry. You have Maggie Bolduc, who is an advocate on the housing front, working very hard with Frappu. Alex, who's running in Le Plateau, is doing his PhD, currently finishing his PhD. We have Susan running for mayor of Ile-Bizarre Sainte-Geneviève. She's actually a beekeeper and really, really in tune with everything related to the environment and sustainability. We can go on.
Okay.
What we did, and just a little caveat, is that the 40 some odd candidates that I onboarded were vetted, were really, we connected with them and we ensured that we had the best possible candidates. And I am Mr. 22,000. In other words, I got 20,000 signatures to force the city to have a consultation. I could have gotten 103 people to sign a paper and be candidates. That's not what we did. All of our candidates had support, photo shoots, posters, trainings, Every Monday we had trainings. Every Tuesday we had webinars. So the candidates that we put together, any of them can sit next to us on this table and speak very, very clearly about policies. And on the Movement MTL website, you can go and see our candidates, and anyone would be very proud.
We would be remiss, we are, because
Yeah.
we waited till this point to get to the environment. You just brought it up. So
Yeah.
where are you on the environment? What's your plan for the city?
So, and this is huge, right? We always talk about carbon neutrality by 2050 and all these kind of audacious goals, and we all know that they've never been met over the last 20 years. We have not met a single environmental target over the last 24 years, and Canada is the only of the G7 that has not met its, or actually greenhouse gas has gone up. This is what we're saying. Very, very simple. There are severe issues of what we call territorial disparities. What that means is that there are low-income boroughs with low access to green spaces. So in 2018, when 66 people died during the heat wave, guess who passed away? Seniors, people who were low income, and people on the periphery of the island because of these heat islands. So what we're establishing is not these Le Grand Parc de l'Ouest that no one's going to go to. You need micro green spaces around the city to ensure that you reduce heat islands and you give people opportunities to have access to green spaces. Also, Bixies. If you open the Bixi app and you look at where the Bixi stands are, they are very concentrated in central boroughs, and exterior boroughs, they're scattered. So we need to ensure that, A, we eliminate territorial disparities, that we give people access to green spaces, to Bixies, and all sorts of other sustainable activities that we have access to them. And secondly, the electrification of public transportation. Right now, we purchased 300 hybrid diesel buses that emit the same amount of greenhouse gas as normal buses. Valérie Plante called it a green revolution. The buses are just as dirty environmentally as normal buses. So what we need to do is electrify public transportation. Should have been done yesterday, and that's something that we are very, very adamant about. And also, when we talk about charging stations for your Tesla, it's, once again, how many people can afford a Tesla? So what I would do is invest more in the electrification of public transportation, the electrification of police cars, and start doing where we can get the most environmental impact and less on some of these ideas that sound really nice but don't have a larger impact because they're going on the fringe of what is possible.
And bike paths? How do you feel about bike paths, pedestrian streets?
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So that's a key part of one of our economic policy, particularly, is that your urban planning has to be done in coordination with residents and businesses, which means that, do you build a bike path on a very busy street during a pandemic in front of a business going bankrupt? And the answer is no. Damage is done throughout the city in many ways.
You see it as damage? Wouldn't you agree that Saint Denis has been a great success?
Saint Denis is a great success, but there's areas in the southwest that are not great success. I believe it's Saint Antoine, right?
And Saint-Jacques.
And Saint-Jacques. So there's Saint Denis, big thumbs up, but I have 700 kilometers done worth of Bixi. The issue with Saint Denis is once you hit Pine, there's nowhere to go. And actually, one of the big accidents that happened in a bike that got hit is because you have to turn west, and then there's no more help. So Saint Denis is a nice alleyway, but it's not connected to existing bike paths. So in other words, what has to happen is coordinating existing bike paths.
Would you remove any, like Denis Coderre said he'd do?
Only those that are painted on. So there are some that are just painted. This you could paint over, but I would not take a jackhammer to any existing bike paths because I think they are secure. And I've gone from Montreal North all the way down to downtown, and it's not always secure. So security is number one, okay. But yeah.
What has been your biggest disappointment in this campaign to date? I say to date.
The hate. The hate.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
The hate. The death threats. The hate. The defamation. The lack of rigor, particularly in the CBC article regarding my organization. They acted as though these people were staples in the organization when they got hype after George Floyd and then ran away. And also the hate mail that and the death threat.
That's racism.
I don't want to call it racism, to be honest.
Well,
The hate mail was racism.
Yes, it
but,
was.
But overall, and why you didn't hear me talk a lot about racism during this election, I think it's worse to be Anglophone in Quebec than it is to be black in many ways, and even worse to be a black Anglophone. But the language issue in Quebec, they're so fearful of it that I'm being attacked left, right, and center, and that's why it's a linguistic issue more than a racial issue, I believe.
We have to wrap up, so I got a couple of
Yeah.
what are 2-word questions, like a lightning round, if you will. So if you can keep the answers short, just hit a couple of them, okay?
Yeah.
So here you go. The Expos.
Love it, but in the East End. It's not going downtown.
Number 2, real quick, downtown parking.
I hate it. Listen, right now I have a car, very hard to park. I think that Valérie Plante is simply making driving a car so painful that you just put your car away.
All right, number 3, municipal taxes.
We're saying that we're going to, on the first year, 3% maximum. After that, not above inflation.
Last one, municipalities. What are you going to do for them?
We need to cut taxes for demerged cities and allow them to have more power to govern and use their tax dollars. Right now, we're overtaxing municipalities, we're overtaxing businesses, and that's a horrible business model. Our business model cannot be to overtax Westmount, Côte Saint-Luc, Pointe Claire in order for us to survive. We have the economic capital that we're generating. Let's give Montrealers, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Vote for Balarama Holness and Move It Montreal. We do not want 4 more years of Valérie Plante. On November 7th, vote for yours truly, Balarama Holness.
If only you had a bit more confidence, Balarama.
He's lacking in confidence. It's too bad. Yeah, really.
Listen, I want to thank you for being here today. Very much appreciated. We allowed to do this?
No, you do.
yeah,
No,
sure.
you're
Bare
supposed
hand
to. Oh,
shaking.
Wow. Oh my God.
Too bad.
And looking forward to the debate on the 28th. I think for a lot of people that'll be an eye-opener.
Yeah.
So I wish you good luck as far as that goes as well. Thanks again for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.